At our number 10 spot, we have the Mongolian death worm. The Gobi Desert, located between Mongolia and China, is said to have the Mongolian death worm, otherwise known as the intestine worm due to its appearance of being fleshy and red in color. This 2 to 7 feet long creature has the ability to spit out venomous liquid out of its mouth, and if you even get close enough to touch the creature, it's believed that the entire body is covered in this sticky, poisonous substance that will kill you just on touch alone. And if that wasn't enough, it can even electrocute you in the same way you can. While movies of the creature depicted as this large, colossal being, is believed to be a lot smaller at around 7 feet in its total length. But regardless, the fact that this creature can hide literally anywhere in the desert sands and come out basically whenever it wants, and it has no weaknesses, it makes it one of the most dangerous and scariest ones on this list. At our number 9 spot, we have the Diaosi Gui. This mythical creature is also known as the hanged ghost, and it's said that the people who have taken their life through hanging or have been executed that way come back and become this vengeful spirit. They claim the spirit appears as a decaying corpse with a long red tongue that hangs far out of their mouth, never going back into their mouth. And let me tell you, these guys smell horrendous as well. So you could imagine how terrifying this would be to encounter. Except if you're a Kiss fan and you're used to this sticking tongue stuff. According to legend, these spirits will appear to unsuspecting people during night, usually by a tree or a building. Then they'll try to convince others to join them in the afterlife. So in China, it's best to avoid places where people have taken their life, because this is where these spirits tend to wander. If you decide to do the complete opposite, the creature will follow you around for your entire life, causing bad luck every corner of the way. At number 8 spot, we have the Akaname. The Akaname is straight out of Japanese myth. It is described to be this small goblin looking creature about the size of a child, except they're hideous. They have greasy, slimy hair, and their body is completely oily. If that didn't make you uncomfortable, maybe the fact that they use their long tongues to lick bathroom floors will. But don't worry, they won't appear in clean bathrooms as their dirty long tongues have nothing to lick. Instead, they target bathrooms that have been neglected and are dirty. So people, do yourself and everyone a favor and clean your bathrooms. Please. They lick and devour any of the filth, grease, hair, and waste that they come across, and the Akaname also chooses to stay away from humans, but instead they creep in the darkness and multiply at rates comparable to a disease spreading. They come in both one-eyed and two-eyed variations, which only adds to the fact that these are grotesque creatures. So I stress this again, clean your bathroom so we can all avoid these type of problems, including stuff with these ugly guys. At number 7 spot, we have the Jiangshi, also known as the Chinese hopping vampire. The Jiangshi comes from a phrase meaning stiff corpse. They are psychic vampire zombies. Yes, you heard that right. Who feeds off a person's chi rather than their blood. And for those who don't know, chi is considered to be a person's life force, which means that it's the energy that flows throughout your entire body, basically giving you life in a sense. So unlike the vampires we have over here in the West, the Jiangshi prefers not to consume humans or our blood, and they also aren't able to walk, so they are seen hopping around with their hands out in the front of them to maintain their balance. Many believe these creatures are created following a violent death, an improper burial, use of supernatural powers, or you get bit by another one. Remember, they're vampires and zombies, so don't get it confused. This is a horror hybrid of the century. At number 6 spot, we're the Sigbin. Straight out of my home country is yet another disgusting and hideous creature. This creature is said to have the appearance of a half hornless goat and half kangaroo, but when I look at it, I think of a chupacabra, but worse. It has the ability to use its long kangaroo tail to whip others with the force, able to knock someone out. They lurk mainly in the night and are known to hunt anyone or anything they see. They will use their sharp teeth to suck out the blood out of their victims, or they'll use it to seek out children to take their hearts just to use for decorations. So pretty horrible stuff, I know, I'm sorry kids. When they do walk around, they actually prefer to walk backwards with their head tucked between their legs like this. Locals in the Philippines claim that some people capture them and keep them as guardians for their property or in these very large jars. I have no idea what my people are doing, but yeah, let's not do this. In the hump of our list, we have the Jenglot. These are small creatures located in Indonesia, but mainly claim their presence specifically in Java. They take on the appearance of a deformed humanoid doll with long growing hair and long nails. The doll by itself causes no harm, but when you begin to feed the doll animal blood or even human blood, it will start to work as black magic. A Jenglot is believed to belong to the vampire family because of its main nourishment comes from the blood of animals or humans. The owner of the Jenglot must feed the creature with a drop of their blood each and every single day. If the owner fails to do so, it is believed that their loved ones will face dire consequences. The blood must not be fed directly to the mouth of the zhenglot, but instead be placed beside it. It's believed that the zhenglots are the spirits of those who passed away after they had practiced black magic in order to obtain everlasting life. Except when they're met with death, the earth would refuse to accept their body, instead turning them into this hideous bloodthirsting creature. At number 4, we have the flying head. This one is definitely the strangest one on this list, but it's still scary, so bear with me. The flying head, or the Shurubotoshi, is one of Japan's most craziest mythical creatures because it's literally just a floating head. It's believed to be an ancient deity that literally is just a flying head that goes around and eats people. They prefer to attack humans by surprise by hiding on the top of trees or in places where you're completely alone. When they catch up to you, they will drop quickly to the ground like a stone, either squishing you to death or trapping you in its mouth to chew you right after. Either way, you will pass away. If you do manage to evade them, they will stop at nothing to get you, and will do so while laughing uncontrollably, which only makes this encounter that much more terrifying. At number 3 spot, we have the Taoti. These creatures from Chinese mythology are definitely one of the most hideous looking creatures from this list of creatures. And we know how beautiful China makes some of these creatures, so this one was just a surprise. They are considered to be one of the 4 evil creatures of the world due to its malevolence and destruction as a creature. If you ever wanted to see these boys in action, depiction of this creature would appear mainly on bronze artifacts, but that first glimpse of them on that movie was all we needed to know that these creatures are not good. At number 2 spot, we have the Tengu. If you ever seen this emoji, then you know what a Tengu somewhat looks like. These creatures live in the mountains and appear to have large feathery wings and wearing a monk robe. Based on the emoji, you already know that their face is red with a long nose and the head of a bird. Originally, the Tengu were seen as evil spirits that caused pure destruction and chaos everywhere they went. This was because Buddhist practices showed that the Tengu were demons and tricksters who opposed Buddha. Tengu were considered demons of death and destruction by Buddhists, but gradually softened into troublesome protectors of forests and mountains, which is the role they continue to play in Japanese folklore. I mean, they look pretty cool and I see it all the time every time I go on my keyboard, and it would be nice if they use them in a video game or something because they're pretty cool looking creatures. At number 1 spot, we're the Nian. To end our point, we got yet another Chinese mythical creature because there are just too many not to mention. The story of the Nian goes that they would feast on human flesh every single New Year's Day. On this day, they would come out of their hiding place in the mountains and raid villages, eat their crops, and when that wasn't enough, they would attack the humans. Except they would begin to notice that the creature would run away by the end of the night when they started to celebrate New Year's. They started to believe it was because they used a lot of the color red, which was the same color as the Nian, which could have acted as intimidation. They also noticed that fire and a lot of noise would scare away the creature, so every single year the festivals got bigger and louder to frighten the beast away for good. The Nian is described as being a flat-faced lion with the body of a bull and the horn of a unicorn, and ever since the Nian has been used during the festivals to commemorate the once terrifying creature.
Number 10, monkey humans. An international team of researchers added human stem cells to macaque monkey embryos and watched as they survived and multiplied as one. The scientists effectively created genetic chimeras, a term borrowed from the mythical monster to describe one organism with genes from multiple individuals. Juan Belmonte, a professor at the Salk Institute and co-author of this study, insists that this is not about creating a full-grown chimera with human and animal traits. Our goal is not to generate any new organism, any monster, he told NPR. And we are not doing anything like that. We are trying to understand how cells from different organisms communicate with one another. Sure, sounds like a cover story to me. He adds that the discovery could lead to better understanding of human biology and diseases, as well as more effective human chimeras involving less similar species. That perhaps could lead to animals being used to grow organs for human transplant. Belmonte and his team injected 25 human stem cells into macaque embryos taken 6 days after fertilization. Human cells were found growing inside 132 of the embryos after 1 day, and 103 chimeras were still alive after day 10. Nearly all had passed away by day 19, and the rest were destroyed on day 20. Number 9, mice with human brain cells. 8 years ago, researchers at Stanford University started an ambitious experiment. They began growing miniature, simplified versions of the human brain from stem cells inside a lab, then later injected that tissue into the brains of newborn rats. The results showed that the brain-like human tissue integrated with the rat tissue, then continued to mature. Those brain cells in turn seemed to influence the rat's behavior. The researchers injected the human tissue into the rats' somatosensory cortexes, regions that receive and process sensory information like touch or pain. After about 2 weeks of training, the rats began to lick a spout in search of water whenever the researchers simulated the brain neurons. They did this using blue light lasers. The researchers also used a puff of air to prod the rats' whiskers, then observed how the human neurons responded. We found that human neurons respond very quickly after we stimulated the whiskers. In fact, more than 70% of the human neurons were engaged in some form of activity within a second or so of that stimulation. So that tells us that they're probably connected. Sergio Posca, one of these study's authors and a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Stanford, said on a call with reporters. Number 8. A mouse virus with human genes. In collaboration with a team from Harvard Medical School, researchers led by Pedro Simas and Kenneth Kay studied a protein of the Kaposi virus vital for maintaining infection. Without this protein, called LANA, the virus loses its ability to cause cancer. The team found that when LANA is cloned into a virus similar to Kaposi but which infects mice instead of humans, it preserves its functionality. This finding came as a surprise since it was assumed that as a consequence of the evolutionary divergence between human and other animal viruses, the genes that code for LANA could not be switched. However, the work now published in PLOS Pathogens showed that even though there are more than 60 million years of evolutive divergence between the human sarcoma herpes virus and its rodent homologue, LANA's functional mechanisms are preserved. These findings allowed researchers to create a chimera virus, a mouse virus with a human viral gene that can be used to test molecules that inhibit human LANA protein in an animal model of disease, treating not only human herpes virus infection, but also its associated cancers. These molecules will hopefully be used in the future as substances to treat Kaposi virus associated lymphomas. Number 7. Human-pig hybrid. In a remarkable, if likely controversial feat, scientists announced that they have created the first successful human-animal hybrids. The project proves that human cells can be introduced into a non-human organism, survive, and even grow inside a host animal, in this case, pigs. This biomedical advance has long been a dream and a quandary for scientists hoping to address a critical shortage of donor organs. What if, rather than relying on a generous donor, you could grow a custom organ inside an animal instead? That's now one step closer to reality, an international team of researchers led by the Salk Institute reports in the journal Cell. The team created what's known scientifically as a chimera, an organism that contains cells from 2 different species. In the past, human-animal chimeras have been beyond reach. Such experiments are currently ineligible for public funding in the United States. So far, the Salk team has relied on private donors for the chimera project. Public opinion too has hampered the creation of organisms that are part human, part animal. But for lead study author Jun Wu of the Salk Institute, we need only look to mythical chimeras, like the human-bird hybrids we know as angels, for a different perspective. In ancient civilizations, chimeras were associated with God, he says, and our ancestors thought the chimeric form can guard humans. In a sense, that's what the team hopes human-animal hybrids will one day do. Or are they just playing God? Number 6. Mice with human booties. The first working replacement anal sphincters have been built in a laboratory and tested on mice. Now, scientists hope the research will benefit humans with fecal and urinary incontinence because current methods used to repair internal anal sphincters, such as skeletal muscle grafts, silicone injections, or mechanical implants, have only had limited success. In essence, we have built a replacement sphincter that we hope can one day benefit human patients. This is the first bioengineered sphincter made with both muscle and nerve cells, making it pre-wired for placement in the body. Senior author Khalil N. Bitar, a professor of regenerative medicine at Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center's Institute for Regenerative Medicine, said in a Wake Forest news release, "Scientists were able to make the bioengineered anal sphincters in about 6 weeks using human muscle and nerve cells. They found the sphincters were able to generate blood supply and work properly in mice. The investigators hope that their research will lead to a more effective treatment for humans because there is a high rate of weakened internal anal sphincters in older adults. Women who had episiotomies during childbirth can also be affected by this condition. It's weird, but it's for a good cause, so maybe it's not so bad." Number 5. Human-rabbit hybrid. That's right guys, scientists in China in 2003 had for the first time used cloning techniques to create hybrid embryos that contain a mix of DNA from both humans and rabbits, according to a report in a scientific journal that has reignited the smoldering ethics debate over cloning research. More than 100 of the hybrids made by fusing human skin cells with rabbit eggs were allowed to develop in laboratory dishes for several days before the scientists destroyed them to retrieve so-called embryonic stem cells from their interiors. Although scientists in Massachusetts had previously mixed human cells and cow eggs in a similar attempt to make hybrid embryos as a source of stem cells, those experiments were not successful. The vast majority of the DNA in the embryos is human, with a small percentage of genetic material called mitochondrial DNA contributed by the rabbit egg. No one knows if such an embryo could develop into a viable fetus, though some experiments with other species suggest it would not. And I already know what you guys are thinking. Stop. Judy Hopps is fictional. Don't even think about it. Number 4, human with animal organs. Stephanie Faye Beauclair, better known as Baby Faye, was an American infant born in 1984 with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. She became the first infant subject of a xenotransplant procedure and first successful infant heart transplant, receiving the heart of a baboon. Though she passed within a month of the procedure, she lived weeks longer than any previous recipient of a non-human heart. The procedure, performed by Leonard Lee Bailey at Loma Linda University Medical Center, was successful, but Faye passed away 21 days later of heart failure due to rejection of the transplant. The rejection is thought to have been caused largely by a humoral response against the graft, due to Faye's type O blood creating antibodies against the type AB xenograft. The blood type incompatibility was seen as unavoidable. Fewer than 1% of baboons are type O, and Loma Linda only had 7 young female baboons, all of which were type AB, available as potential donors. A baboon heart was used as there was no time for a suitable human heart to be found. It was hoped that the transplant could be replaced by an allograft at a later date, before Faye's body began generating isohemagglutinins. But a suitable donor could not be found in time. Prior to the procedure, no infant heart transplant, even with human hearts, had been successfully performed due to a lack of infant human hearts. To address this issue, Bailey had become a pioneer in the research of cross-species heart transplants, which had included more than 150 transplants in sheep, goats, and baboons. Number 3, pigs with human blood. The embryos did not grow into part human piglets, and the technique was far from perfect. The researchers reported in the journal Cell. And these are not the first animals that are part human, part animal, but it's the first time this particular technique has been used to make chimeras, animals with parts from 2 different species. The experiments being done by Juan Carlos Izbiza Belmonte at the Salk Institute in California and colleagues are controversial. The National Institutes of Health only proposed lifting its ban on funding such work pretty recently. The team followed guidelines issued by the International Society for Stem Cell Research. Belmonte said the embryos are only grown long enough for different types of tissue to develop clearly. These particular embryos had some human muscle cells, for instance. There are sheep spliced with human genes that produce human proteins in their milk for treating a rare lung disease. Scientists have created pigs that produce human blood and injected human stem cells into paralyzed mice to help them walk again. Animal-human hybrids can be used as sources for organs to transplant, as we talked about before, for blood and for immune system products. According to the United Network for Organ Sharing, 118,744 people were on waiting lists for an organ transplant in 2017. Organs with human DNA would be more likely to survive transplant into a person. Number 2, the Vacanti mouse. The Vacanti mouse was a laboratory mouse that had what looked like a human ear growing on its back. The ear was actually an ear-shaped cartilage structure grown by seeding cow cartilage cells into biodegradable ear-shaped mold and then implanted under the skin of the mouse, with an external ear-shaped splint to maintain the desired shape. Then, the cartilage naturally grew by itself within the restricted shape and size. The splint was removed briefly to take the publicity pictures and is very controversial. The E-mouse, as it became known, was created by Charles A. Vacanti in the Department of Anesthesiology at Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School. Number 1, Humanzee. There have been no scientifically verified specimens of a human-chimpanzee hybrid, but there have been substantiated reports of unsuccessful attempts to create one in the Soviet Union in the 1920s, and various unsubstantiated reports on similar attempts during the second half of the 20th century. Ilya Ivanov was the first person to attempt to create a human-chimpanzee hybrid by artificial insemination. Ivanov outlined his idea as early as 1910 in a presentation to the World Congress of Zoologists in Graz. In the 1920s, Ivanov carried out a series of experiments culminating in inseminating 3 female chimpanzees with human sperm, but he failed to achieve a pregnancy. These initial experiments took place in French Guiana. In 1929, he attempted to organize a set of experiments involving non-human ape sperm and human volunteers, but was delayed by the passing of his last orangutan. The next year, he fell under political criticism from the Soviet government and was sentenced to exile in Kazakhstan. He worked there as a Kazakh Veterinary Zootechnical Institute and passed away of a stroke 2 years later.
At our number 10 spot, we have the emerald jewel wasp. The emerald jewel wasp has the ability to turn cockroaches into zombies. Yup, you heard that right. The wasp's manipulation of the cockroach is a truly remarkable and horrifying process. These wasps reproduce by stinging a cockroach and paralyzing it with its venom. The first sting targets the thoracic ganglion, which is part of the central nervous system. This ends up paralyzing the front legs of the cockroach. Then after this, the wasp delivers a second sting, and this time targeting the brain of the cockroach. The stings aren't meant to kill, but to give the wasp control of the cockroach, turning it into a zombie. The wasp then bites off the head of its antennas. It then leads the half-paralyzed, brain-dead cockroach along by its antenna, using it as a lead towards its burrow. Inside of the burrow, it lays eggs inside of the roach in a place known as a coxal plate. Then it buries it alive. While in its tomb, the larvae will hatch from within the cockroach, and over a period of a week, they'll begin to feed off the still alive cockroach from the inside. Once it's done eating, it eventually bursts out of the cockroach in a manner reminiscent of the famous scene from the movie Alien. Number 9, the Liopleurodon. Imagine, if you will, a creature that is as big as a school bus with an everlasting thirst for blood, gliding through the warm tropical shallow seas of the late Jurassic. This is exactly what the Liopleurodon was. A massive marine reptile that measured up to 82 feet in length and was also considered one of the deadliest predators in the history of life on Earth. With its massive head, short neck, and powerful flippers, this creature was a formidable predator. Its jaws were lined with needle-sharp teeth that were capable of killing any other marine animal at the time. The skull and jawbones were specifically strengthened to help them withstand the powerful biting force of its jaws. This ancient beast was a true apex predator, preying on other giant marine reptiles and fish, particularly marine crocodiles, sharks, and all sorts of other pliosaurs. But the most impressive prey item on its menu was the 90-foot giant fish known as a Leetzichthys. Liopleurodon was an ambush predator, lying in wait for its prey to pass by. It was capable of holding its breath for at least an hour, making it a stealthy hunter. It also had a nose that was capable of picking up any scent without inhaling any water, similar to a shark, allowing it to detect prey from considerable distances. But Liopleurodon wasn't just a killing machine, it was also a survivor. It was long-lived, capable of surviving to over 100 years old, and like crocodiles, it grew constantly throughout its life. And as a reptile, it still needed to breathe air, but because of its immense size, it could not leave the water, even for short periods of a time. Number 8, the Candiru. This fish is the only fish feared by men. Why? Well, because it has the ability to swim up your... yeah, you know. The Candiru is a small parasitic freshwater catfish that is said to be able to enter a man's urethra, attach itself with its spines, and cause immense pain. And I know all my fellow guys can feel this pain through the screen. The legend of this creature has been circulating for centuries, and it is deeply ingrained in the cultural imagination since there is no real evidence of this actually happening. But there are many stories of it. The Candiru lives in the Amazon and is said to be attracted to the smell of urine, leading it to swim up a man's urine stream and enter the urethra. The catfish is usually 17 centimeters long and can grow up to 40 centimeters long, and apart from their unique talent of entering a male's urethra, it usually attaches to the gills of larger fish instead and uses their spines on their gills to cling to their prey, causing inflammation, hemorrhage, and then death. The first account of Candirus entering the human body took place surprisingly in women. Earliest reports date back to 1829. German biologist von Martius only heard of the story secondhand from local people from the region. The local people of the region supposedly wore jock straps made of coconut shells when they bathed in the river as a preventative measure. It wasn't until 1997 when a 23-year-old man claimed that a Candiru had jumped from the water into his urethra as he urinated in knee-deep water in Brazil. This claim was met with much skepticism, and marine biologist Stephen Spott concluded that the Candiru's teeth were not strong enough to chew through such tissue. In conclusion, while the legend of the Candiru is a fascinating one, there seems to be little evidence to support the idea that it is a real threat to human health. But just the fear of having a fish go up your, you know what? doesn't sound too appealing at all, and definitely makes it one of the most terrifying creatures to ever exist. At our number 7 spot, we have the Basilosaurus. When we see whales now, we see them as gentle giants, but back in the prehistoric times, these large creatures had teeth like this. This animal was the Basilosaurus, a prehistoric whale that lived between 40 to 34 million years ago during the late Eocene period. The name Basilosaurus, which means king lizard in Greek, is fitting for this formidable creature. Measuring up to 70 feet in length and weighing between 10 to 15 tons, the Basilosaurus was one of the largest marine animals of its time. Its body structure, more eel-like than whale-like, caused initial confusion among scientists and earned it the name sea serpent. Basilosaurus also possessed a unique physical feature, with its blowhead located on its snout, unlike the more primitive whales that had it at the tip of their snout, or the modern whales and dolphins that have it located between or behind the eyes. But the worst thing is that these creatures were the top predator in their environment. They basically preyed on sharks and all types of other gigantic predatory fish. And the reason why this is known is because some of these animals are just found with bite marks of this creature. Number 6, terror birds. Imagine racing through the vast Argentina plains and you see a strange feathery bird towering over you, and as you walk up, you see it pecking its prey to death with a hooked beak mounted on its head as big as a horse's. These were the terror birds, the most dominant flightless bird to ever exist. And let me tell you, they truly lived up to their name. These creatures were not only tall, 10 feet to be exact, but they were also fast and fierce, embodying the power of their predatory dinosaur relatives before them. The terror birds were the only line of carnivorous flightless birds to ever exist. Luckily, these species were kept in the Cenozoic era, some 62 million years ago. But if you wanted to imagine these, just imagine an overgrown ostrich with a beak that can completely crush your skull in one peck. They dominated South America, ruling over a diverse fauna made up of primitive mammalian herbivores and small carnivorous mammals. The terror bird has also been studied extensively, and many theories have been proposed about how they hunted. Some scientists believe that they are cheetah like runners, chasing down their prey with lightning speed, while others think they are more like kickboxers, using their massive beaks to render their prey helpless. But one thing is for sure, these birds had powerful beaks and necks that could withstand a great deal of force, making them one of the most terrifying creatures to ever exist. In the hump of our list, we have sea scorpions. All I gotta say is, 8 feet long scorpions? Need I say more? Eurypterids, also known as sea scorpions, were a group of ancient aquatic predators that roamed the waters during the Paleozoic era over 400 million years ago. Despite their nickname, sea scorpions were not actually scorpions, but they are believed to be closely related to arachnids, a group that includes scorpions, spiders, and horseshoe crabs. These ancient creatures varied in size, with most of the fossil specimens discovered being the size of lobsters or even smaller. However, there are 2 giant species that stood up in the fossil record. The first is Echelopterus, which may have been the largest arthropod ever to live, measuring up to 7 feet in length. The second pterygoid was just inches shorter and may have been a scavenger, but regardless, these guys were huge. These creatures were carnivores as well, and they would hunt and eat different aquatic animals using its pincers and spiked tail. These strong and sharp claws helped them firmly hold on to their prey where they couldn't escape and they would be consumed later. They also had compound eyes, which also aided in their hunting. And to make these guys even more scarier, they had the ability to walk on land for short periods. This just meant that there were few places for the prey, which may have included early arthropods, fish, and amphibians to hide. Their presence in the ocean likely played a role in the evolutionary arms race that led to the development of armored and terrifying predators, spurring the ancestors of modern terrestrial animals to abandon the ocean. And if these guys existed today, I bet we would avoid all parts of their natural habitat. Number 4, the Titanoboa. A silent hunter once roamed deep in the South American jungle, known as the Titanoboa. The Titanoboa snake was unlike any other animal in history, a true giant among predators. With its massive size and incredible strength, it was the undisputed ruler of the prehistoric jungle 60 million years ago. The death of the giant reptiles left a vacuum at the top of the food chain, and Titanoboa gladly stepped up to it. This prehistoric species grew up to 50 feet in length and weighed as much as 2.5 tons. That's as long as a semi-trailer you see on highways and about as twice as heavy as a polar bear. So yeah, pretty terrifying. At its thickest point, Titanoboa was 3 feet wide, which is longer than a human arm for some people. In the hot, humid jungle, Titanoboa fits right in, its brown skin camouflaged perfectly as it slunk through muddy waters. Its behavior is a topic of debate among paleontologists. Some scientists think it killed by constriction and asphyxiation, while others argue that it kind of behaved like an anaconda, lurking in the shadows and ambushing unsuspecting animals with a stunning blow. Just imagine wandering the jungle and coming face to face with a predator of such monstrous proportions. proportions. It is both mesmerizing, but more so incredibly terrifying to think about. Number 3, the Deinosuchus. Just when you thought crocodiles were already terrifying, we have a giant prehistoric crocodile known as a Deinosuchus. Deinosuchus, meaning terror crocodile, was a giant crocodilian that roamed the earth around 72 to 82 million years ago, during the late Cretaceous period. This prehistoric creature was likely one of the most terrifying predators of its time, and its discovery is shedding new light on the ancient world of dinosaurs. Deinosuchus had teeth the size of bananas, which were perfect for crushing bones of large prey such as dinosaurs. Paleontologists have found evidence of the Deinosuchus bite marks on a number of fossil bones, including those of theropod dinosaurs, hadrosaurs, and turtles. The bite marks just showed how dangerous the animal could have been, and scientists theorize that the creature likely used a technique known as the death roll to take down its prey. You know, that method still used by alligators and crocodiles to this day? To hunt, these creatures would lie in wait in shallow waters at the edge of the sea, and when an unsuspecting dinosaur came to take a drink, the Deinosuchus would drag them into the water and proceed to tear them apart with its powerful jaws. What makes this creature particularly interesting is that it outweighed even the largest theropod dinosaurs, making it the chief predator in the ecosystem and possibly the largest crocodilian ever known. Imagine if it still lurked our waters. Number 2, the Dunkleosteus. While we have a piranha that can rip through human flesh, there's another fish that can chomp straight through bone. This creature is known as the Dunkleosteus. Let's just all be thankful they went extinct. So during the late Devonian period, around 360 to 380 million years ago, Dunkleosteus ruled over the world's oceans with an iron fist. Named in honor of Dr. David Dunkel, former curator of vertebrate paleontology at Cleveland Museum of Natural History, this fish had giant bone plates in its head and jaws that served as tank-like protective armor, making it an even more fearsome predator. Dunkleosteus was massive, estimated to be 20 to 33 feet long and weighing up to 1 to 4 tons. So not only did this fish pack a punch, but it was a complete unit of a creature. Despite its lack of teeth, this fish was truly a force to be reckoned with. Its bite packed anywhere around 11,000 to 21,000 pounds per square inch of force, even more powerful than a great white shark. Its jaw plates were also self-sharpening, making it capable of eating almost anything, including its own kind. Research suggests that this creature was so powerful that it may have been the main cause of extinction for many of the species in the oceans, which is just so insane to think about. Number 1, the Anthroplora. Are you afraid of little centipedes? Well, you're gonna hate this guy. Introducing the Anthroplora. Anthroplora was a giant centipede that lived during the late Carboniferous period, around 299 to 318 million years ago. It is considered one of the largest land invertebrates of the time, with some species reaching up to 2.5 meters in length and over 30 centimeters in width. It had a segmented body that was covered in a hard exoskeleton, which protected it from predators. Each segment of its body had 2 pairs of legs, giving it an impressive total of up to 236 legs. It likely moved by undulating its body in a wave-like motion, using its many legs to crawl over the forest floor. Luckily for all the meaty animals, this creature was a herbivore, and probably fed on the lush vegetation that existed during this period, such as club mosses, ferns, and horsetails. It likely had a slow lumbering movement and a low metabolic rate, which would have allowed it to survive on the relatively low nutrient vegetation of the time. Remains of Anthroplora have been found in Europe and North America, indicating that it was a widespread and successful species. However, like many other species from this period, it went extinct at the end of it, possibly due to change in climate or the evolution of new predators. At our number 10 spot, we have Ilya Ivanov. Ilya Ivanov was a Soviet scientist who attempted to create a hybrid of a human and an ape, also known as a human Z. This controversial and unethical experiment was carried out in the 1920s, and Ivanov's intention was to prove that humans and apes were closely related and could potentially breed together. In February 1926, Ivanov began his experiment by attempting to artificially inseminate female chimpanzees with human sperm. He also turned to the idea of using a human surrogate mother to carry a chimpanzee fetus. So he traveled to West Africa to gather his chimps, but later he would be met with unsuccessful attempts to create a successful hybrid. Despite all their efforts, his attempts to create an ape-human hybrid ultimately failed, and the project had been shrouded in mystery and speculation ever since. Some have suggested that Ilya was attempting to create a super soldier or even a mutant ape army for the Soviet government, while others have speculated that he is simply driven by a desire to prove that his artificial insemination techniques could be used to create hybrids between closely related species. Regardless of his motivation, his legacy lives on as a cautionary tale about the dangers of attempting to tamper with the natural order of things. So this project ultimately raised raise a bunch of ethical questions about the potential consequences of such an experiment and the potential impact on both the human and ape subjects involved. At a number 9 spot, we have Thomas Hogg. Thomas Hogg was a servant accused of impregnating his employer's pig in the colony of New Haven in 1640. Yup, you heard that right. The case against Hogg began in 1647 when a sow belonging to one of his neighbors gave birth to piglets that were said to resemble Hogg in some way. I don't really know if that's a diss or just some really crazy allegation. Despite the strangeness of this, Hogg was taken to trial and accused of bestiality. At the trial, the deputy governor of the colony even went so as far to bring Hogg into a barnyard and order him to scratch the sow under the ear in an attempt to prove his guilt. However, the sow did not react in the way that they had hoped, and Hogg maintained his innocence throughout the proceedings. Without a confession from Hogg, the authorities were unable to sentence him to death, as the requirement of 2 witnesses could not be met. Instead, Hogg was found guilty of lying and stealing and was punished with a severe whipping and imprisonment. While Hogg was in prison, he was reportedly kept on a mean diet and hard labor in an effort to suppress his lust. Despite the strange circumstances of this case, New Haven v. Thomas Hogg left a lasting mark on capital punishment and has gone down in history as one of the most interesting cases of its kind. Surprisingly enough, Hogg's refusal to confess that spared him from the fate that befell several other men and boys who were convicted of similar crimes and hanged in the colony during the 1640s and subsequent decades. Just imagine being accused of crossbreeding with a pig and almost being sentenced to death for it. People back in the day were truly different. At a number 8 spot, we have cows that produce human milk. Chinese researchers had made headlines with the recent genetically modified herd of 300 cattle that produce milk similar to human breast milk. They did this by inserting a human gene into the cow's genetic information. This would cause the animal's glands to produce milk with large quantities of lysozyme, which is a protein that is abundant in human milk but not for cows. Lysozyme not only gives the modified milk a sweet taste, but it also makes the milk much more healthier and way more nutritious. The researchers, led by Ning Li of China's Agricultural University in Beijing, hope to bring the modified milk to market in China within 3 years in order to address the malnutrition among children. However, the milk must go through a testing phase before it can be sold, and it is not clear whether or not it will be available on the market in the United States. Well, because it's also controversial. Like, why would you drink quote-unquote human milk that is directly from a cow? Feels weird, right? And to think about it, even for the cow, knowing it's not producing naturally anymore, I don't know how to feel about that. Initial research suggests that modified milk is safe and may provide significant health benefits, but more testing is needed to confirm this, let alone the ethical nature of this all. The use of genetically modified products remains an iffy topic, and the idea of consuming milk from genetically modified cows may be unsettling for some people. At our number 7 spot, we have the human monkey embryos. A team of international scientists in China have made a breakthrough in organ transplant research by successfully combining human and monkey cells into a living, growing embryo. The team of researchers added human stem cells to monkey embryos, resulting in the creation of genetic chimeras, which just means organisms with genes from multiple individuals. These chimeras could provide insight into human biology and diseases, and may also pave the way for the use of animals to grow organs for human transplant. However, the successful experiment also raises ethical concerns about the creation of fully grown chimeras involving human cells and their potential mental capacities. Professor Julian Savulescu, the director of the Oxford Center for Practical Ethics and co-director of the Wellcome Center for Ethics and Humanity, warns that it is only a matter of time before human, non-human chimeras are successfully developed, and any fully grown chimera involving human cells would need to be thoroughly assessed to determine its mental capacity. And much of the reason why this experimentation is done in the first place is because in China, there is no rule that prohibits scientists from mixing human embryos. The only thing keeping this experiment from being completely unethical is the fact that they only allow these embryos to develop for only a week or 2 in the lab. But regardless, I can only see how this causes more concern for crossbreeding in the future. Number 6, Hiromitsu Nakaochi. Hiromitsu Nakaochi is a Japanese scientist who is known for his work on creating animal hybrids, including mice with rat pancreases and pigs with human blood. Nakauchi's research focuses on the use of stem cells and genetic engineering to create animals with organs or tissues that are suitable for transplantation into humans. While his experiments have shown some promise, many consider them to be highly controversial and something we shouldn't continue to do. One of Nakauchi's most ambitious projects have been the creation of pigs with human blood. He did this by introducing human stem cells into pigs' bone marrow, and he has been able to create animals with up to 60% human cells in their blood. These pigs could potentially be used as a source of organs for human transplantation, as their organs would be less likely to be rejected by the human immune system due to the presence of human cells. Nakauchi also worked on creating mice with rat pancreases. This involves creating a fertilized egg from a mouse and a rat and then removing the cells from the developing embryo that will form the pancreas. The resulting embryo is then implanted into the surrogate mouse, where it develops into a mouse with a rat pancreas. This work has the potential to help address the shortage of human organs available for transplantation. While his work has the potential to revolutionize the field of transplantation medicine, it also raises important ethical questions. Altering the genetic makeup of living organisms in such a radical way has the potential to create unintended consequences, and it is important to carefully consider the potential risk and benefits of such research. However, if conducted responsibly, Nakauchi's work has the potential to make a significant positive impact on human health, but that is all for the future to see. In the hump for a list, we have the beefalo. The beefalo experiment, also known as the Catalog experiment, was an attempt to produce a hardier and more efficient meat animal by crossing a domestic cow with a male American bison, and it was initially used for meat production. So basically crossbreeding in order for us to eat more. The beefalo experiment began in the late 19th century and was motivated by a desire to produce a meat animal that was both stronger and more resistant to disease than traditional cows. The beefalo was thought to be more able to thrive in a wider range of environments, as it inherited the strength and the hardiness of the bison, as well as the milk and meat production of the domestic cow. Despite the initial promise of this experiment, it ultimately fell out of favor due to the number of factors. One major concern was the lack of demand for beefalo meat, as many consumers preferred the taste and texture of traditional beef. Obviously. In addition, the beefalo experiment raised concerns about the potential risk and consequences of hybridizing animals from different species. There were concerns about the potential impact on the animals involved and the potential for the spread of diseases between the species. Despite these concerns, the experiment remains an interesting example of the use of hybridization in animal breeding. And while it was not a commercial success, it was an important scientific endeavor that helped to advance our understanding of genetics and evolution. At number 4 spot, we have the two-headed dog. Russian scientist and organ transplant pioneer Vladimir Demikov conducted multiple surgeries which successfully transplanted vital organs between dogs. As his experiments progressed, he aimed to see if he could take things further. He wanted to graft the head of one dog onto the body of another, creating one fully intact dog. Then finally in the 1950s, he created the first two-headed dog. But this wasn't by any means ethical. Apparently, he conducted the two-headed dog surgery 23 times with varying degrees of success. The most famous one of his experiments involved one large stray German Shepherd and a smaller dog. As seen in the picture, the German Shepherd looks extremely sad and confused. Initially, the experiment was a quote-unquote success, since both heads could hear, see, smell, and swallow. However, the dog only lived 4 days, and I guess it was going through the worst type of pains imaginable. Despite the unethical nature of this experiment, calling Demikov a mad scientist may be undercutting his contributions to the world of medicine and transplants. But in this case, the bad outweighs the good. And let's hope there's never an experiment like this again. Well, at least on dogs. At number 3 spot, we have the spider goats. Yes, spider goats are a thing, but no, they do not climb walls, nor do they swing on webs. This goat is named Freckles, but she isn't your regular goat. She is also part spider. Basically, she is a genetically modified goat that produces milk containing spider silk protein. Researchers from the University of Wyoming have found a way to use goats to produce spider silk protein, which has a variety of potential applications due to its strength and elasticity. This is significant because traditionally, large numbers of spiders were required to produce enough spider silk for these purposes. But spiders tend to be territorial and often kill each other when kept in close proximity on spider farms. To overcome this problem, the researchers inserted the spider's dragline silk gene into goats in a way that the goats would only produce the protein in their milk. While the transgenic goat had kids and began lactating, the researchers collected the milk and purified the spider silk protein into much larger quantities. The scientists also plan to incorporate the silk genes into alfalfa plants in the future, which could produce even larger quantities of silk due to their high protein content and wide distribution. The transgenic goats did not exhibit any differences in health, appearance, or behavior compared to regular goats, but it's still a very controversial experiment for obvious reasons. At a number 2 spot, we have Mary Toff. This isn't your regular crossbreeding story. In the early 18th century, a woman named Mary Toff gained notoriety for claiming to have given birth to rabbits. In 1726, Toff claimed that she had given birth to a number of rabbit fetuses, and the news of her supposed rabbit pregnancies quickly spread throughout all of England. Many people, including doctors and surgeons, believed her claims and traveled to see her in person. Toff became something of a celebrity and was even visited by the Prince of Wales, who was reportedly fascinated by her story. Despite widespread skepticism and disbelief, Toff continued to claim that she had given birth to rabbits and even produced some rabbit carcasses as evidence. Many people were convinced by her claims, and it was not uncommon for people to travel long distances to see her. However, there are also people who were very skeptical and accused her of being a fraud. Eventually, it was revealed that Toff had been using the carcasses of real rabbits to create the appearance of a rabbit pregnancy and birth. It is unclear exactly how she managed to do this, but some have suggested that she may have hidden the rabbit carcasses in her clothing or used them to create the appearance of a birth. Regardless of how she did it, Toff's story became a sensation at the time and was widely reported in the media. Although it ended up being a hoax, let's just hope no real human actually gives birth to real rabbits. At a number 1 spot, human cow embryos. Back in 2008, British researchers at Newcastle University announced that they have successfully created embryos and stem cells using a combination of human and the egg cells of cows. Yup, cows and humans. According to the researchers, the experiment was designed as an interim step towards the understanding of biology of embryonic stem cells, which are the body's master cells that can give rise to other cells and tissues in the body. While the work has not yet been further reviewed by other experts in the field, the researchers have emphasized that it will not lead to the creation of hybrid human-animal babies or direct medical therapies. Instead, it is hoped that the results of the experiment will contribute to the development of stem cell therapies in the future, which could potentially be used to treat diseases such as diabetes, spinal cord injuries, and even cancer. However, the use of human embryonic stem cells has always been the source of controversy, as it involves the destruction of these human embryos, which some argue should be treated with dignity. Despite these ethical concerns, some experts argue that a limited amount of research using human embryonic stem cells may be justified if it leads to significant gains in preventing premature death and understanding diseases. Coming in at a number 10 spot, we have the mega piranha. Now you might think this just looks like a regular piranha, but no, this is actually the mega piranha, and it's way scarier than you think. Mega piranha is a giant fish that lived 10 million years ago, and it grew up to 3 feet long. What's unique about it is that it had not 1 but 2 rows of teeth, unlike modern piranhas. Scientists estimate that its bite could also be as high as 4,700 neutrons, which is more than twice as hard as a hippo's bite. So all you gotta think about is those hippo videos where you have them crushing a full watermelon. Well, this fish can do double. And for more perspective, the average human bite is only 400 newtons compared to this 7,000. Mega piranha lived during the late Miocene period in what is now South America. These prehistoric predators were much larger than their modern relatives and could weigh up to 20 pounds. So you could only imagine coming face to face with one of these juiced up piranhas. Let's just all be glad they're all extinct. At a number 9 spot, we have the short-faced bear. This is the short-faced bear, also known as Arctodus. This massive bear first appeared in the fossil records 1.8 million years ago, and it's just amazing to think that they survived all the way up until just 11,000 years ago, which is a pretty close call for humans, and thank God we didn't have to come face to face with these creatures. One specimen found weighed a whopping 2,100 pounds, and when they stood up on their hind legs, they could reach up to 12 feet tall. As well, their vertical arm reach extended up to a further 14 feet. So basically, this is like coming across an oversized, overweight grizzly bear that has the same reach as Giannis Antetokounmpo. Pretty terrifying, right? At a number 8 spot, we have the Titanoboa. A silent hunter once roamed deep in the South American jungle known as the Titanoboa. The titanoboa snake was unlike any other animal in history, a true giant amongst predators. With its massive size and incredible strength, it was the undisputed ruler of the prehistoric jungle 60 million years ago. The death of the giant reptiles left a vacuum at the top of the food chain, and Titanoboa gladly stepped up to the plate. This prehistoric species grew up to 50 feet in length and weighed as much as 2,500 pounds. That's as long as a semi-trailer you see on highways and about twice as heavy as a polar bear. So yeah, pretty terrifying. At its thickest point, Titanoboa was 3 feet wide, which is longer than a human arm. At our number 7 spot, we have the saber-toothed tiger. Here is the saber-toothed tiger. I mean, who hasn't heard of this beast? It's literally one of the main characters in Ice Age movies. But let's get real here. This is not a creature you want to mess around with, and we should all be glad they're extinct. These creatures could reach up to 8 feet long and weigh in a whopping 660 pounds. And those fangs, that's where they get their name from, could be roughly 7 to 12 inches long. So it's really no wonder they were apex predators during their time. Did you know that they were not actually tigers at all? They're actually part of a group of prehistoric cats called the Smilodon. And while they may have been fierce predators, they have also some interesting social behaviors. Scientists have uncovered evidence that suggests that they may have lived in family groups and even cared for their young. While they may have not been the fastest runners, they were definitely strong enough to bring down the prey with one powerful bite. So could you imagine if these creatures were still around today? I don't know about you, but I think Mike Tyson would have owned one of these in his prime. At a number 6 spot, we have Dinosuchus. Just when you thought crocodiles were already terrifying enough, we have a giant prehistoric crocodile known as a Dinosuchus. Dinosuchus, meaning terror crocodile, was a giant crocodilian that roamed the earth around 72 to 82 million years ago, during the late Cretaceous period. This prehistoric creature was likely one of the most terrifying predators of its time, and its discovery is shedding new light on the ancient world of dinosaurs. The Dinosuchus had teeth the size of bananas, which were perfect for crushing bones of large prey such as other dinosaurs. Paleontologists have found evidence of Dinosuchus bite marks on a number of fossil bones, including those of theropod dinosaurs, hadrosaurs, and even turtles. The bite marks were indicative of the ferocity of this animal, and scientists theorize that the creature likely used a technique known as the death roll to take down its prey. And you know, this method is still used by alligators and crocodiles today. To hunt, these creatures would lie in wait in shallow waters at the edge of the sea. And when an unsuspecting dinosaur came to take a drink, the Dinosuchus would drag them into the water and proceed to tear them apart with its powerful jaws. What makes Dinosuchus particularly interesting is that it outweighed even the largest theropod dinosaurs at its time, making it the chief predator in its ecosystem and possibly the largest crocodilian ever known. Imagine it still lurked our waters. In the hump of our list, we have the Anthroplora. Are you afraid of little centipedes? Well, you're gonna hate this guy. Introducing the Anthroplora. Anthroplora was a giant millipede that lived during the late Carboniferous period around 299 to 318 million years ago. It is considered one of the largest land invertebrates of all time, with some species reaching up to 2.5 meters in length and over 30 centimeters in width. It had a segmented body that was covered in a hard exoskeleton, which protected it from predators. Each segment of its body had 2 pairs of legs, giving it an impressive total of about 236 legs. It likely moved by undulating its body in a wave-like motion, using its many legs to crawl over the forest floor. Fortunately for all the meaty animals, Anthroplora was a herbivore, and probably fed on the lush vegetation that existed during this period, such as club mosses, ferns, and horsetails. At a number 4 spot, we have the terror birds. Imagine racing across the vast Argentinian plains and you see a strange feathery bird towering over you. As you walk up to it, you see it pecking its prey to death with a hooked beak mounted on a head as big as a horse's. These were the terror birds, the most dominant flightless bird ever to exist. And let me tell you, they truly lived up to their name. These creatures were not only tall, 10 feet to be exact, but were also fast and fierce, embodying the power of their predatory dinosaur relatives before them. The terror birds were the only line of carnivorous flightless birds ever to exist. Luckily, these specimens were kept in the Cenozoic era some 62 million years ago. But if you wanted to imagine these, just imagine an overgrown ostrich with a beak that could literally crush your skull. At number 3 spot, we have the Echolopterus. 3 words, giant sea scorpion. Or 4 words, less tasty looking lobster. That's right, this 8-foot looking anthropod lived in the water and had pincher claws. Many of them looked eerily similar to the face huggers from the Alien movie franchise. They are pure nightmare fuel. Ecliptors had segmented bodies with multiple specialized limbs, some with spikes. They had spring-loaded claws to snatch a fish as they passed by, with the largest having an 8-inch spike claw. Smaller sea scorpions are known to have crawled ashore to mate and even shed their outer skin. Imagine finding the molt of one of these monsters on the shore just before going swimming. Already, with a sense of dread and paranoia, you distance yourself from the shore, and then you see a shadow in the murky waters. At a number 2 spot, we have the emerald jewel wasp. The emerald jeweled wasp has the ability to turn cockroaches into zombies. Yup, you heard that right. The wasp's manipulation of the cockroach is a truly remarkable but very horrifying process. These wasps reproduce by stinging a cockroach and paralyzing it with its venom. The first sting targets the first thoracic ganglion, which is part of the central nervous system. This paralyzes the front legs of the cockroach, then the wasp delivers a second sting, this time targeting the brain of the cockroach. The stings aren't meant to kill, but to give the wasp control over the cockroach, turning it into its own zombie. The wisp then bites off the head of its antennas, and then it leads the half-paralyzed, brain-dead cockroach along by these antennas, using it as a lead towards its burrow. Inside the burrow, it lays eggs inside of the roach in a place known as the coxal plate, then buries it alive. While in its tomb, the larvae will hatch from within the cockroach, and over a period of a week, they'll begin to feed off of its still alive cockroach from the inside. Once it's done eating, it will eventually burst out of the cockroach in a manner very reminiscent of the famous scene from the movie Alien. Coming in at a number 1 spot, we have the Basilosaurus. When we see whales now, we see them as gentle giants, but back in the prehistoric times, these large creatures had very terrifying teeth. This animal was the Basilosaurus, a prehistoric whale that lived between 40 to 34 million years ago during the late Eocene period. The name Basilosaurus, which means king lizard in Greek, is fitting for this formidable creature. Measuring up to 70 feet in length and weighing between 10 to 15 tons, the Basilosaurus was one of the largest marine animals of its time. Its body structure, more eel-like than whale-like, caused initial confusion among scientists and earned it the name sea serpent. Basilosaurus also possessed a unique physical feature with its blowhole located on its snout, unlike the more primitive whales that had it at the tip of their snouts, or the modern whales and dolphins that have it located between or behind the eyes. But the worst thing is that these creatures were the very top predator in their environments. They basically preyed on sharks and all other types of other predatory fish. And the reason why this is known is because some of these animals are found with the bite marks of this creature.
Number 10, Dunkleosteus. This 33-foot long armored fish from the Devonian era lacked teeth, but its jaw contained razor-sharp protrusions of bone that it could use to pierce and cut through its prey. These bones grew continuously, and as they did, the edges rubbed together with those of the opposing jaw, acting like self-sharpening shears. This would ensure the fangs were always ready to chomp into armored prey like arthropods, ammonites, and other fish. This 4-ton monster fish patrolled inshore waters and could snatch up prey by opening and closing its jaws within 50 to 60 milliseconds. If this thing came back nowadays, they'd probably make fishing the most dangerous profession in the world, along with our next entry. Number 9, Helicoprion. The mystery of this bizarre fish starts with a weird fossil and numerous attempts to figure out what it was and how to classify it. Helicoprion puzzled paleontologists and ichthyologists for over a century. The only remains of this creature up until 2013 were from a fossilized whorl of teeth. While most scientists agreed that the teeth belonged to the lower jaw, that didn't prevent the presumed location of the teeth from migrating around the body in sometimes fanciful arrangements that can be used in numerous illustrations and reconstructions. With the later discovery of some portions of a jaw, the location of its buzzsaw-like teeth were definitely determined to fill the lower jaw. Strangely, there were no upper teeth, so this creature could terrifyingly gum and bite you at the same time. The jaw would close, rotating the teeth backwards, much like a circular blade saw. It probably fed on the soft bodies of squid and other cephalopods. The whorl of teeth was formed as they continuously grew outwards, creating a spiral as it aged. The teeth at the beginning of the whorl being small and gradually increasing in size toward the end. Another fish with an equally odd and terrifying face, Edestus, had offset scissor-like jaws that protrude out of its face. No thank you. Number 8, Arthropleura. This is not something you want to see crawling around anywhere near you. Arthropleura was an 8.5 foot long millipede from the Carboniferous era, and though it was herbivorous, likely feeding on dead plant matter like modern millipedes, it still has scare factor. I'm burning the house down if I find this under my sink. Just because it won't try to eat you doesn't prevent it from being creepy while it scuttles about. Ugh. Fossil trackways have been discovered showing that Arthropleura could move and maneuver quickly, undulating hundreds of legs in rhythm to nauseate and disturb anyone watching. These are the largest known land invertebrates of all time, and it is unlikely that they had any predators, but it could probably rear up into a defensive posture and look you straight in the eyes. Number 7. Leviathan melvillei. This extinct whale was named for both the monstrous sea creature Leviathan from the Old Testament, that when he rises up the mighty are terrified, they retreat before his thrashing, and for Herman Melville, the author of the novel Moby Dick, a tale of an accursed white whale that terrorized Captain Ahab and eventually brought about his passing and the destruction of his ship and crew. This is an amazing namesake to live up to. The Leviathan melvillei is related to modern sperm whales like Moby Dick, and lived during the Miocene epoch. It was 45 to 57 feet long and had a 10-foot long skull that housed 40 14.5 inch long teeth. These are the longest teeth used for feeding known from any animal extinct or alive. They fed on large prey at the surface of the water, including other whales. This whale likely became so large because it was competing directly with Megalodon for food, who we'll get to a little bit later. Number 6. Spinosaurus. Spinosaurus is one of the most spectacular and horrible creatures that ever stalked the earth. It had an elongated skull, much like a crocodile, and a snout filled with approximately 64 straight conical teeth. Evidence suggests that it was a semi-aquatic, so there was nowhere to escape this fish and dinosaur-devouring monster. Spinosaurus is currently the largest of all known carnivorous dinosaurs, even larger than T-Rex and Gigantosaurus. While the exact size is debated, recent finds and studies suggest that Spinosaurus may have been 41 to 59 feet in length and weighed in excess of 20 tons. It had elongated neural spines that ran along its back, creating a sail-like structure that made it look even larger and more terrifying. Number 5. Titanoboa. For those of you with ophidiophobia, this one's for you. Titanoboa was a 42-foot long snake that lived during the Paleocene epoch. It likely hunted much like crocodiles do, lurking, partially submerged at the water's edge so that it could ambush thirsty, unsuspecting animals. It would strike from the water and wrap itself around its prey, delivering a crushing demise. It lived in the rainforests of South America, where temperatures were warmer and the tropics of today. This allowed the cold-blooded reptiles to grow larger than modern reptiles can. This snake would have Indiana Jones doing the Scooby-Doo and Shaggy run. Like Zoink Scoob. Number 4. Gigantosaurus. Gigantosaurus was 43 feet long and larger than the size of a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but only by 3 feet. It had a 5.2 foot long skull with 64 8-inch long compressed and serrated teeth that were made for slicing through flesh, though they were not capable of crushing bone like the teeth of the Tyrannosaurus. Gigantosaurus is from the Cretaceous period and lived in what is now Argentina. It was related to the nearly equally sized Carcharodontosaurus from Africa. Evidence suggests the possibility that Gigantosaurus was a pack hunter and that they hunted large sauropods. This would make it the only theropod that actively hunted sauropods. Another interesting feature is that the lower jaw was broadened slightly, allowing it to handle smaller prey. It's easy to imagine Gigantosaurus chomping down on some flesh of some goofy bipedal mammals if it had ever been given the chance. Number 3. Megalodon. This 59-foot long shark lived and hunted in the same waters as Leviathan melvillei. It had massive 7-foot wide jaws containing 5 rows of around 276 compressed blade-like teeth that were made for cutting and grasping powerful prey. Sharks have skeletons made of cartilage that are not typically preserved in the fossil record, and so the jaws of the megalodon and a few traces of fossils are all paleontologists have to build their hypothesis. The body shape of a megalodon is likely similar to a larger and more robust great white shark. If a megalodon exhibited ambush hunting behavior like great white sharks, it would have taken prey by surprise from below and made precision strikes strikes to immobilize its prey with an amazingly strong bite. Sharks are also known for shaking their prey side to side to increase bite forces. Fossil evidence of teeth marks found on whale vertebrae suggests that Megalodon was an active predator of large whales. Their teeth are built with a structure that would rarely crack even if they hit the bone. Damn, that's crazy. Number 2, Jacalopterus. 3 words, giant sea scorpion. Or 4 words, less tasty looking lobster. That's right, this 8-foot-long arthropod lived in the water and had pincher claws. Frankly, all of the Eurypterids are scary as hell, and this entire video could be exclusively about how terrifying these things look. Many of them look eerily similar to the facehuggers from the Alien movie franchise. They are nightmare fuel. Jacalopterus had segmented bodies with multiple specialized limbs, some with spikes. They had spring-loaded claws to snatch up fish as they passed by, with the largest having an 18-inch spiked claw. Smaller sea scorpions are known to have crawled ashore to mate and even shed their outer skin. Imagine finding the molt of one of these monsters on the shore just before going swimming. Already with a sense of dread and paranoia, you distance yourself from the shore, and then you see a shadow in the murky waters. Number 1, Sarcosuchus. Sarcosuchus, whose literal name means flesh crocodile, gross, is an extinct genus of crocodiliform and distant relative of living crocodiles that lived during the early Cretaceous. From the late Hauterivian to the early Albian, 133 to 112 million years ago of what is now Africa and South America. The genus name comes from the Greek sarx, meaning flesh, and sochus, meaning crocodile. It was one of the largest crocodile-like reptiles, with the largest specimen of S. imperator reaching approximately 9 to 9.5 meters, or 29.5 to 31.2 feet long, and weighing up to 3.45 to 4.3 metric tons. It is known from 2 species, S. imperator from the early Albian eras formation of Niger, and S. harti from the late Hauterivian of northeastern Brazil. The first remains were discovered during several expeditions led by the French paleontologist Albert Félix de Lapparent, spanning from 1946 to 1959 in the Sahara. These remains were fragments of the skull, vertebrae, teeth, and scutes. In 1964, an almost complete skull was found in Niger by the French CEA, but it was not until 1997 and 2000 that most of its anatomy became known to science, with an expedition led by the American paleontologist Paul Sereno discovered 6 new species, including one with about half the skeleton intact and most of the spine.
Coming in at our number 10 spot, we have the Caspian tigers. A team of scientists is hoping to bring back the Caspian tiger, which is one of the largest cats ever to roam the earth. These beasts were generally smaller than Siberian tigers, but don't be deceived, because males could weigh up to 240 kilos and some adults grew up to 10 feet long, making them larger than most big cats seen today. The team's plan is to reintroduce them back to Central Asia, including Kazakhstan, using the Siberian tiger, which is genetically similar to the Caspian tiger. The scientists say that the Siberian tiger's phenotype proves adaptable to the arid conditions of the introduction site, and they have identified a promising site at the Ili River Delta and adjacent southern coast of Balkhash Lake. During their prime, Caspian tigers could be found in Turkey and through much of Central Asia, including Iran and Iraq. The Caspian tiger extinction was due to human activity, including poisoning and trapping, promoted by rewards in the former Soviet Union until the 1930s, as well as habitat loss caused by irrigation projects during the Soviet era, which destroyed the woodlands and reed beds that were critical to tiger habitat and caused the cat's prey to disappear as well. Although plans to reintroduce this beast are in early stages, do we really want to bring back more deadly creatures? I don't know about that one. At a number 9 spot, we're the saber-toothed tiger. Now, with another tiger on this list, we have the saber-toothed tiger, but you may know them best as Diego from Ice Age. The saber-toothed tiger, also known as Smilodon, is one of the most fascinating and mysterious creatures of the past. With 11-inch long canine teeth, it's no surprise that they're one of the most fearsome predators during the Pleistocene era. Despite their intimidating appearance, the Smilodon's teeth were actually quite brittle and would easily break during combat. These beasts also weighed up to 600 pounds, which is roughly the same as a Siberian tiger, which are still out there today. One unique hunting skill of the Smilodon was to pounce on their prey from trees and then plunge their teeth into their prey's neck. They would then wait for the prey to bleed to death and then they would consume it. So why would scientists want to bring back the saber-toothed tiger? Beats me. But considering our technology nowadays, it just seems that scientists will go ahead and just resurrect every extinct animal in history. Don't you think so? At a number 8 spot, we have the Siberian unicorn. When we hear the word unicorn, we usually picture a magical creature with a single horn on its head. However, unicorns weren't always just part of our imagination. In fact, there was once a real-life unicorn that existed on this planet. Introducing the Siberian unicorn. Unlike the majestic horse-like creature we imagine, the Siberian unicorn had a large hump on his back, similar to a camel, and it also weighed around 4 tons and were pretty terrifying. This creature roamed the grasslands of Eurasia thousands of years ago, but sadly, they went extinct around 200,000 years ago. However, newly found bones suggest that they may have survived until 40,000 years ago. The biggest problem researchers faced when attempting to bring this creature back to life was that the DNA they used was a bit too old. However, in 2018, new technology allowed scientists to analyze Siberian unicorn DNA for the first time. While it's exciting to think about bringing an extinct creature back to life like a unicorn, it's important to consider why the Siberian unicorn went extinct in the first place. So we probably shouldn't bring it back. At a number 7 spot, we have the gastric brooding frog. The gastric brooding frog was an incredible species of ground-dwelling frog native to Australia. The species is notable for its very unique reproductive capabilities. Basically, the female would swallow her fertilized eggs, stop eating, and then allow the eggs to develop in her stomach until giving birth to fully formed frogs. Unfortunately, this frog is now extinct and was last seen in the wild in the 1980s due to the human introduction of pathogenic fungi. Despite its extinction, scientists are still studying this frog species in hopes of understanding its reproductive abilities. All the way at our 6th spot, we have the mower bird. The mower bird was a gigantic flightless bird that lived in New Zealand, weighing a whopping 510 pounds. Sadly, humans hunted these birds for their meat, causing them to go extinct somewhere in the 1600s. However, researchers at Harvard University have been able to reassemble the mower bird's genome and extract DNA from a toe bone in 2018. This opens up the possibility of bringing back the mower bird through genetic engineering by using the DNA from a museum specimen of the bird and then implanting it into the egg of a living emu or kiwi. The mower bird was not the only extinct animal to be considered for resurrection through genetic engineering. In the hump of our list, we have the diodon. Meet the diodon, the mother of all pigs. This prehistoric creature was the size of a rhinoceros and had an impressive set of teeth. Diodon lived between 29 and 19 million years ago, and its fossils have been discovered throughout the United States. Adult diodon had skulls that were about 3 feet long, and they stood at an impressive 5.8 feet tall at the shoulders. But what's in a name? If you like the sound of diodon, you're going to love its translation: hostile, destructive teeth. This is a fitting name considering just how impressive and dangerous its teeth were. In the past, diodon was known as the terrible pig. However, as people began to understand just how hostile and destructive its teeth were, a name was definitely necessary. It's just amazing to think about how big and powerful animals were millions of years ago, and the diodon is a perfect example of this. So, would it be a benefit to bring these guys back? I probably wouldn't want them. At a number 4 spot, we have the Tasmanian tiger. Okay, I know this is like the 3rd tiger already on this list, but I swear, it's the last one. So, a US biotech company called Colossal Biosciences has announced its plan to bring back the Tasmanian tiger back to Australia through de-extinction. The last of the Tasmanian tigers died in captivity in 1936, but Colossal Biosciences hopes to sequence the creature's genome and bring it back to life through bioengineering. The company has outlined a 10-step process that includes sequencing the creature's genome, computational biology, and establishing compatible cell lines for cell editing, as well as stimulating embryonic growth until it is ready for surrogate and eventual birth. Colossal expects this process to last a decade and plans to create a de-extincted Tasmanian tiger-ish thing that will eventually be dropped back into the wild. However, some researchers are skeptical of this whole plan, and ethical questions remain on how to handle the creature if it is successfully brought back to life. For those wondering if they are actually dangerous, the answer is not really. And most documents show that they're actually very, very shy and avoided humans at all times. But hey, look at how they open their mouth. Terrifying. Number 3, the beige. The beige, a type of freshwater dolphin, used to swim in the Yangtze River and was one of the few true river dolphin species in the world. The population began to decline due to China's industrialization, and by the end of the 20th century, there were possibly only 13 left in the wild. Despite preservation efforts made in 2001, the baiji went extinct due to human activity. The baiji was the only member of its mammal family and had highly developed sonar and reduced vision. Its extinction highlights the danger human industrialization poses to the natural world. Number 2, the steppe bison. The steppe bison was once a common sight on the vast steppes of Europe and Asia, a large shaggy-haired bovine that weighed up to 900 kilograms and had long horns a meter apart. Early humans relied heavily on this massive creature as a source of food, and its remains have been found in Neanderthal hunting campsites. But now, scientists are attempting to bring back this extinct creature through cloning. Since 2015, South Korean and Russian scientists have been working together to recreate the lost animal by attempting to clone a Canadian wood bison. Number 1, a woolly mammoth. Last but definitely not least, we have everyone's favorite extinct animal, the mammoths. These gigantic furry elephants with tusks have been extinct for a long time, but surprisingly not as long as previously believed. In fact, just 4,000 years ago, 1,000 woolly mammoths lived on Wrangel Island, which is a small island in the Arctic Ocean. Scientists are using remains of woolly mammoths found on Wrangel Island to bring them back to life using stem cell technologies. Woolly mammoths lived in cold climates, so many of their remains are intact, including a frozen woolly mammoth found in Siberia in 1997. Scientists plan to use their DNA from frozen specimens to merge with other animals like elephants. The extinction of mammoths, like many other animals, is primarily attributed to human activities like hunting and climate change. And really, we're just gonna have to wait and see if they actually do decide to bring these guys back.